Thank you for the intro. Hearing Mr. Sam Kirby sounds weird. I'm only 26. Like I'm not that far removed from it. My sister goes to Western here, and I will say this room is like 90% female, and so we're even stronger, more concentrated than the 65-35 Dr. Cobain that you talked about. But I'm excited to see all of you here as well. So we're going to be talking about the Honors College as a maximizer. I kind of summarized it, Harlexton, CET short film, and VidMonster. I wish it was that simple and that straightforward, and it hasn't been, but I'm excited to kind of talk about how the Honors College and this honors experience, and show of hands, how is everybody in here an honors student? Perfect, great. Kind of talking about how honors maximize kind of my experience, but honestly how I was able to find some small opportunities along the way with the Honors College to use it to maximize what I wanted to do as well. So I started, and look at this little child up here. So this is me filming from the 7th floor of Minton Hall over there. I think I was filming like rain or something for a class project, but that feels like forever ago, but also like yesterday. So my freshman year was fall of 2013. I decided to come to Western to pursue TV and film production, but it wasn't my first exposure to Western, so I was first exposed to it from an honor band clinic. I'm an oboe player. You wouldn't guess it by meeting me or looking at me, but I was an oboe player. I was pretty good. I was in all-state band, and came here for an honor band clinic. Back at the time, DSU was the Downing University Center. This building wasn't here. The Honors College was up on the hill in a small little house and like a trailer up there. I've heard you, Dr. Cobain, kind of talk about that. So Western's you've gone through such a transformation in that time, and I also was part of the marching band in high school, so I came down for KMEA state finals a couple times, so those were my first exposures to Western. And I kind of had a decision to make when going to school, because I had been so heavily involved in music. That was the thing that I had done, orchestra and symphonic band and drumline, and that's kind of where my heart was. But along the way, started creating YouTube videos and media content with friends, and it kind of grew from a hobby into more of a passion. And so when I ultimately decided what major to declare, and I did that right from the beginning, I wanted to do it in TV and film production, but also find ways to still engage in music, do the symphonic band and orchestra. So I also have minors in international business and music. And like I had mentioned, up to that point, my media content creation background was in creating fun YouTube videos with friends, creating video blog sort of stuff, like really organic capture opportunities, and then a couple freelance things, a couple small weddings here and there, like smaller weddings, not like smaller weddings. So just to kind of outline, I'm a big bullet and outline person. We're going to kind of go over 3 different things about honors that kind of shaped my experience here at Western. The first is the affinity to other honors level thinkers. Kind of that iron sharpens iron, being around people who are just as motivated as you are to make the most out of whatever course or experience or educational opportunity that they're engaged in. The next being, and I've got a lot of content on this because it was a great experience. Is there any Harlexton alum in here? Anybody go to Harlexton? Right back there. Perfect. So I've got a lot from that as well. It was a great experience. And then the final kind of piece of that, wrapping things out, is my honors thesis that I did with a short film. It was kind of combining the best of both my major and honors together, kind of where all of that came to combine. So let's first talk about affinity to other kind of honors level thinkers. Like I said, iron sharpens iron, steel sharpening steel effect, kind of right from the beginning. Not only was I in band in high school, but I also was an AP student, so I came in with a lot of credit hours, really kind of had a background in the arts with music, media creation, et cetera, and it was kind of nice that first year because I decided to come to Western versus somewhere closer to where I grew up in Union, Kentucky. I could have gone to UK and probably been there with half of my friends. But coming to Western, I liked the idea, living on the 7th floor of Minton, that I was going to be around other people going through that freshman honors experience and kind of learning from each other along the way. And so being around other people who had that same fire and that same desire to kind of make the most out of the opportunity was great. For me, and I hope this isn't offensive, but generally if you're an advanced student or if you're trying to get the most out of it, in some cases 100 and 200 level courses can get a little bit, repetitive or just a little bit, I guess, easier. And I hope that doesn't come across the wrong way, but I liked the idea that I had the opportunity right from the get-go to kind of make a class a little higher level for me, or kind of turn the temperature up a little bit. And I also really firmly still believe that one of the greatest advantages of just going to a standard 4-year university for a bachelor's degree is the ability to build relationships. And so I really valued that ability to kind of network, and I still interface with a lot of people that I met that freshman year in honors and consider them, valuable relationships. But it's kind of about keeping the end in mind. So with me, I kind of had a couple key things. I wanted to be a media creator of some sort. I still wanted to pursue music somehow, and I wanted to build new friendships and opportunities. So, Harlexton. Oh, Harlexton. It was a great experience. If you have the opportunity still to do some sort of study abroad, or that's probably a better question. Has anybody else done study abroad, not just Harlexton in the room? You should do it. You should definitely do it. So Harlexton, and not what you think it is initially, and I'll explain that further. I ended up taking all of my international business courses, most of them while I was there, from British professors, living in a manor with, 200 or so other people. Harlexton effectively has relationships with several universities, but the largest share of students when I was there were from WKU, who are part of the Honors College. And so you all kind of come together for a whole semester and get the opportunity to all take a British Studies class together, but then also do other courses that help fulfill your hours. But one of the biggest advantages to that is, with the class load generally being Monday through Thursday, over the weekend you can do extended travel, and once you're over in Europe, it's easier and cheaper to get these other places that you want to see and travel. I'll say, and just being entirely kind of candid, I didn't have the best social high school experience. I was a little kind of, I come across extroverted, but generally in high school kind of didn't play well with that. And so I wasn't huge on the 200-person, almost kind of boarding school experience from a social standpoint. And so I took advantage of the trips in an entirely different way. In that, other than, say, for one, every trip I did was either a duo or a solo trip. In that, and if you feel, wherever you're traveling, safe to do so, I'll advocate heavily for solo travel, in that if you go on a trip with a group of 7 or 8 other people to a culture you've never been in before, you kind of have a crutch to lean on in your other group. And also it takes a while to make decisions. So I liked the idea that I could go a place, I could take a recommendation from somebody I met at a hostel, or just really plug into relationships, because I didn't have anything else to kind of lean on in that, other than the duo trips I did, but still that kind of allowed us to really immerse within an experience and kind of learn from that. And so I actually have a couple of these. I think, are they still hanging up here in the college? I've got some pictures that I kind of took along the way. And I'll kind of explain what I did with all of these. Each trip that I did, as opposed to just going and experiencing, I definitely did that, but I also took this little guy, and I still have it, this little baby camera right here, was kind of I said I did some solo trips, this was my only companion. And so I tried to treat each trip like also a video project, like a travel video project, and kind of because of that, now I have a record of each of my trips to look at, but more than anything, when I go back and watch through all of those, I see progression in how I'm filming from the beginning to the end. Because every time, I guess, every trip I took, I was reshaping a scenario and a vision for how I was capturing stuff. And it really, when I watch through it, and I've actually collected like the main highlights together, it runs about an hour. So that's it for my talking, and I'm just gonna play that. And no, I'm just kidding. We're not gonna do that. But let me give you an idea. Like, they're not, look at that old logo. So I just took like these little videos everywhere that I went along the way on this little pocket camera. And like I said, once I reach kind of my, I think week 16 on there and really look at them, I see like such a development in the way I was shooting from the beginning to the end. And so granted, this is like 2015 and I'm doing all this on like a little handheld thing. But anywho, I really feel like doing those trips outside of Harlexton, and the experience at the school was great. Great professors there as well, and I did have the ability. I didn't mean to sound negative about being in with other people. I made a lot of great relationships there, but from the travel and trip side of things, took a lot of those solo, and that was the spring semester of my sophomore year. So that was kind of the semester before I was kind of at my halfway point through being here on the Hill. There's some other things I did as well. Clearly I don't have my hands in enough things, so I just keep piling stuff on. And so I was part of the drum line here at Western, the concert band of Wind Symphony, as I mentioned. I was part of a co-ed honor fraternity as well called Phi Sigma Pi. Learned a lot there about social and service development. Was parliamentarian for several semesters, which learning how to read legal jargon did kind of help later on with the starting a business thing, but we'll get to that. And then I also spent a year and a half working on the student crew for WKYU PBS. I know it's an honors function, and honors is ultimately like, I don't think I would have taken that extra step to even pursue something like working at WKYU PBS if I didn't already kind of build that culture or learn from that honors culture of adding that thing onto your plate because it's going to advance you. So I worked at WKYU PBS, really kind of honed the rough skills and the vision that I had built prior. So kind of thinking in order of doing the freelance work, doing the class work and trying to make every project that I did during school, mean more, to then realizing that there's some skills there, but needing to get a very professional experience sort of environment to bring all that together. I ended up working there as well. So the bigger, crazier thing, and this feels like it was literally yesterday, because this was this was spring of 2016. I did my honors thesis, that was also my BCom 400 level capstone class, and I decided, as opposed to creating like a minute polished piece or whatever, I decided I'm going to make one that's 20 minutes long, that's a short film, like a sci-fi short film with effects and everything. I'm at first, and still for the time, felt rather ambitious, but what it did, and thinking about how it helped afterwards and the skills that I kind of acquired from that definitely helped along the way. So those being like fundraising and PR, high-level group production, logistics and production paperwork. When we get into showing some of the stuff that we're doing now, it all looks pretty and fun, but there's kind of a lot of scheduling and logistics and paperwork that surround that. So getting more comfortable with that makes it so that you can enjoy the artwork sort of piece a little bit more. And then time management and editing efficiency. I had to spike this whole 20-minute short film edit in like a month. So it was pretty quick. on pulling that together. So here's like a little trailer for the film. Ooh, spooky. That's sci-fi stuff. Oh boy. So, in creating this kind of seminal piece of college work, that ended up coming back to, and I'm thankful that I've curated an affinity for writing, especially for this, because it ended up being a lot of it, but I'm so happy that I did do the honors thesis, because compared to the normal class I would have taken, I'd complete the project, there's kind of a little bit of summary writing and that's it, but doing it as my honors thesis, there's a whole other element of kind of capturing everything that was done and the development and the writing piece of it. And I'm especially grateful that I did that, looking back at it now, to be able to, I'm not lying, probably about 2 months ago, like read through like a portion of this because I knew I had kind of thrown these thoughts out there. So to be able to capture like the thought in a time and to be able to go back to it and reflect on that, especially through a project like this, kind of, it creates record of what I learned in a way that I don't think I truly appreciated until recently that I had. Because at the time, especially like you're painting the picture of it, spring of 2016, I did this. Fall of 2016 is when I started VidMonster. There wasn't a lot of like overlap time there for me to really think about what I had developed here. But I do want to read the foreword of it to kind of give a little bit of perspective. When I was preparing for this, went back through it, and I thought that this summarized everything really well, talking about a little bit more reflection on like the early on days, like before college, back in like middle and high school, starting to kind of make videos and how it kind of all pulled together into this. So it says, being an overachiever is detrimental in most cases, but spawned for me a great passion in storytelling. Ms. Schaefer offered 1 extra credit video assignment each semester, a fun experience no one passed up, and my friends and I joined together to form up a concept, not realizing how much we would put the extra and extra credit. The assignment, create an earthquake safety video. What we heard, create a 15-minute melodramatic spy drama around an evil doctor and his earthquakeinator. Critics raved, so terrible it was awful. Was this filmed on a potato? Secret Agent Q, Die Another Day turned out horrible, but the process of creating the story had me hooked. Eric and Houston, my 2 project partners, became close friends of mine and would help me to make more revolutionarily terrible videos in the future. A year passed and YouTube grew more popular. The internet video community had and still kind of has an attractive social draw. This inspired me to beg my parents to buy me a Flip Ultra HD camera. It was a 720p vertical disaster that accompanied me everywhere I went, becoming the vehicle with which I would start telling my stories. I was passionate about capturing my friends and my experiences. My friend Matt's dog, Chingu, took a poop on the basement floor, and the resulting panic was my first Facebook-only release. Other highlights included numerous moments in the Ryle High School band room, rides in Matt's Ford Ranger, nerd-themed adventures with Ryan Froelich. Seeking an increased amount of control in that storytelling, I taught myself Sony Vegas HD Platinum 10, figuring out chroma keying, nonlinear editing, sound, and visual effects. My passion continued to junior year of high school when school continued to push video projects as an alternative to the typical posters and papers. From strange parodies of local commercials to random classroom antics, our English teacher, Miss Caldwell, praised them all and gave me a true confidence in what I still, at that time, considered a hobby. It was in those groups that I came to know Colton Smith, who quickly became my partner in crime with video production and my best friend. We would get together and play around with my first Canon DSLR just for the heck of it. Storyline, it didn't matter. Other people to act, it didn't matter. We tried to communicate ideas visually, and together as we matured started to learn what was truly possible within the medium of film and video production. Additionally, I invested countless hours of my high school free time producing a comedy skit series on local public access TV. Our group came to know each other through our church, which we used as a shooting location. Ken, Colin, Kyle, Andrea, Keegan, Colton, Chris, it's a lot of names. And I started The Big Show and produced content for almost 3 years. I learned a lot about creativity and humor while being introduced to an actual on-set environment. Colton and I also continued to produce our own VidMonster brand of humor videos and short films. My growing passion for producing video then led me to gather all my resources for my first major production, Epic Nerf Battle for the Ages 3. Remember when I said I didn't have like a ton of friends in high school? We made Nerf gun videos. I'm just kind of painting the picture. Prior to Nerf gun disasters had been filmed in earlier high school. And side note, one thing that still bothers me is Epic Nerf Battle for the Ages 3 still has more views on my YouTube channel than like any other video I've ever made and put thousands of dollars into. Like, it still has more views, and it kind of pisses me off. But, it was a 50-minute parody action flick that ended up teaching me the most about the importance of endurance for larger productions. I'm going to turn this way because now it's closer. During all my years of high school, video was a hobby. A large majority of my after-school hours were spent on the parking lot for drumline rehearsal. I played and still do play the oboe and was an all-state selected player. Everyone in my family, including myself, had always imagined I was pursuing music in college, and to this day, more distant relatives ask about my music major and what I'm doing after graduation. The summer after I graduated high school proved to be one of the most difficult decision-making points in my life. On the other side of that tunnel, I chose video production and continued to pursue music in more of a hobby role. It's crazy how dynamic life can be, throwing you down a path you never expected. I never stopped making stupid videos. I continued to pursue making them with my new friends I made during my freshman year at WKU, but as I'll get to later, a newfound interest in producing differently arose in me, focusing on quality rather than quantity and on actually learning something about the equipment I contributed to a productive period during my college years. I started making those stupid videos all those years ago so that other people could identify with my story, and I had also assumed the most interesting story I had to tell was one about me, never from me. It had never been a story that communicated not only action but also a feeling. I discovered that true filmmakers and video artists try to communicate what they feel through realities that they create. This realization inspired several short films through my college career leading up to my largest film project to date, Odessa. The following is a reflection that chronicles its creation from the idea all the way to the film's release. So I found that, and I'm happy I've written that to kind of summarize that, because I think like 10 years from now, I don't know if without something aided to be able to either go back and watch videos or to, you know, have a reflection like that, and that's just the open of the paper, that I'd be able to kind of capture that sort of feeling. And honestly, like reading it now kind of makes me a little emotional too, thinking about all of that. So thinking timeline-wise and kind of getting you to the second kind of half of things here. Odessa, I completed that in spring of 2016. Honors people were nice and they gave me a pass, so that was great. Thank you for that, appreciate it. It was around July 2016 that I decided to leave the student crew at WKYU PBS and formally start VidMonster in August of 2016, which, if you look at the dates, was during my last semester of college. So several professors I need to apologize to for my last semester working on two things at a time. But that's kind of how all of that started. So in August, and I had always been pretty, frugal with my money and used the money that I had made during the summers to, get my own production equipment to freelance. I asked my dad for some money, but only enough to cover the first month and security deposit of my new office lease. That was it. That's kind of when we formally actually started an office location and did that. I paid him back, by the way. Operation Pride and Orchestra Kentucky were our first clients that I transferred from my freelance business into our formal LLC. And at the time, we had to discover how to be, 21 years old and speak with those who have 30 or 40 years of experience in their industry, which is something that was honestly kind of hard to figure that sort of piece out, to go and, being a 21-year-old who's got all this energy and passion for starting something and then meeting with people who have been in their industry for 30 or 40 years, there's a different level of energy, a different level of experience there, and overcoming that is something that I think I was well equipped to learn how to do because of my college experience and honors, but it's also something I kind of had to learn along the way and utilize those tools that I had kind of built up. So there's our young babyface team. We started mainly kind of working in the South Central Kentucky area. We had about a team of about 6 people, and kind of had a realization that you don't really need a huge team to do a lot of work if you can kind of focus on your strengths. I kind of break our growth up into phases based on location, and we're in our third location now, for any sort of perspective. This was by, I think, 2018, kind of had VidMonster 2.0. We're starting to branch out a little more with clients, and also the difference between 1.0 and 2.0 is that when we started, we wanted to kind of be an all-in-one sort of micro agency where you could come and you could get video and social media and websites and all that sort of stuff. But about this time, we decided to not do like websites and social media marketing and PR and that sort of stuff, and just to focus exclusively on the content, which sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it actually allows us to build more relationships with more agencies that specialize in that, or directly with marketing departments that already have a lot of that sort of piece handled. And so by that point, we had trimmed that back to mainly offering visual content, so video, photo, and animation. It's definitely a little bit risky at that time. I'm not going to act like starting a business is just you take your college experience and you package it all up, and then you go out there and then you work really hard and then it's all sunshine, because it's not. But I think you can weather that a lot better by kind of leaning on experience that you've kind of gained over time. And so now, here we are, VidMonster 3.0. In the background, you're kind of seeing kind of like faded out client work. We honestly haven't grown like staff-wise all that much in size, but in capability, that's been something that we've really kind of focused on. We expanded pretty significantly in 2020 into live streaming, specifically because of COVID. So COVID happened, March of 2020, who can forget? And then around May, like late May of 2020, we had devised a way to conduct entirely virtual conferences that didn't look like weird, awkward switching on Zoom, where we were able to really remote people in and give them a professional sort of polished broadcast experience and lean on our production background and on kind of our eye for graphics and that sort of stuff, and to create a better experience for virtual conferences. And so that really picked up, and still today is about 30% of what we do. I like it because I don't, and this might be a Q&A sort of discussion, but I don't think that the hybrid event or the virtual event is entirely going anywhere at this point. And so it felt cool and really energizing to have that kind of new small business energy, like again when we were trying a COVID pivot, because at that point everybody's kind of trying a lot of different things. And so that's just kind of an update on that side of things of what we do. But we are in, and some of you may have driven by, but we're downtown on the corner of Chestnut and East 7th Street. And one advancement of this location is, compared to the last one when we moved in, we have two separate buildings. One that's a studio space that we utilize for our own production, as well as offering it to freelancers and small video teams and stuff to come in and utilize the space, because we don't utilize it 100% of the time. So we've got that in an office space there as well. And we really like having that versatile sort of studio space there. And then this is really bright. I apologize. I didn't think about going from dark image to bright image, but ta-da. We've had a lot of great client relationships and experiences, and have had to really kind of tough it out to earn those along the way, starting from like right out of school, like sweaty running from class during my senior semester into like a business meeting and then out and like that sort of stuff. But we're really proud of the relationships and the partnerships that we've really built with our clients. I think that's one lesson, and I've got a couple bulleted, but that I've kind of learned from my experience at WKU and with honors, is how to create, especially in kind of the group project sort of scenarios, how to create a really reciprocal relationship with a client, and how to really be a team player, I think is something I learned through a lot of those more project-driven experiences. So yeah, like kind of like I mentioned, the first thing, honors kind of taught me, and Dr. Cobain and I were talking beforehand a little bit about nobody can really prepare you for what entrepreneurship feels like. It's like a whole different sort of energy, and I think you have to do it to feel it, but it helps going in and having kind of a toolkit that you've built over time strategically. Resilient leadership, doing honors and generally taking at least 18 hours and doing band and doing all of these other things like time management, and also just the kind of stick-to-itiveness to push through it and do long hours of studying and all that sort of stuff is something that I kind of learned through that. Kind of the same thing as endurance through hardship. And then a hunger for research and continuous learning was a big piece, and it's kind of another thing that I kind of realized around the same time as reflecting on my thesis, is that's so invaluable, especially working in like media and technology, to be able to, at first it's frustration when you're Googling like, why doesn't Premiere do this? And you're kind of looking for different, pieces about software. But if you're anything like me and, kind of grew up on YouTube, and you kind of get down to YouTube hole, once you search for that first thing of how to do X in a software program, you end up on the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one. And so being kind of open and naturally kind of curious about how things work, and then also knowing well how to synthesize and organize and put that information into practice is something that I really feel like I gained. But, and not that I haven't been real the rest of the time, it's all what you make out of it. Any opportunity, especially, and what I really liked about honors is that you can take the same course load, the same classes as somebody sitting right next to you, and you can pass and you can, move through. But ultimately, what you do with it is much more important. Effectively, honors is going to pass you the ball, but they're not, and they're even going to, tell you where to run, but they're not going to run for you. And so that's kind of my ultimate kind of message with it, is that all of the opportunities and checkpoints are there. They're passing you the ball, but it's about really grabbing the ball, realizing that they've done that, so that you can kind of run further with it. So that's my life in a nutshell. So thank you all for coming.
Thanks for coming. We have free food afterwards, so you guys can kind of mingle, ask Sam all of those annoying questions you have in person. Then get to know each other a little bit more. But once again, give it up for Sam Kirby.
We're doing open Q&A or just mingle Q&A?
We are taking a few questions that people have.
How many questions? Yeah.
Looking back, now that you've had time, I feel like look back. Essentially, if you could do anything different, take advantage of any opportunities you didn't while you were in school, what would you do?
Hindsight bias. This is not honors related, but I would have started working at WKYU PBS earlier, I think, so I could have focused on that and ways to kind of combine what I'm learning there with certain honors track things as well, and starting that earlier on. I would have done different. It's honestly kind of hard to say anything else I'd do different, other than, realizing I realize it now and I got the most out of it, but if I had realized what I was doing by taking videos everywhere I went for Harlexton, and kind of even knowing that in advance, I would have signed up even sooner. And I think I signed up when it first opened for my, people to apply. So I hope that answers your question. It's kind of hard to think back, because it really doesn't feel like it was all that long ago, even though it was. So it feels like it's been forever, and also like a day.
What was your biggest surprise as a entrepreneur or right out of college, getting this started?
My biggest surprise as an entrepreneur?
Or like challenge?
Surprise, challenge. Really good questions. I guess something that surprised me is that generally when growing a business, people come up and they'll ask like how many people you have now and like that sort of thing, like how large is your team? But kind of that realization of, more people is more cost as far as running a business. The more you can do with that smaller unit without overloading people, the better. So if I had realized that earlier, I might have looked into some, automation and project management and kind of efficiency tools probably a little earlier on if I didn't think, oh, I need a person for that or I need a person for that piece. And it would have also probably helped me develop more independent contractor relationships. So because we're a small team, but we need to be big sometimes, we build relationships with individuals kind of on a project by project sort of basis. And if I had realized that, we probably would have kind of spread our net a little further with that too. Yes?
What is the most challenging project you've worked on so far?
The most challenging project. Challenging how? Like emotionally or like technically or both?
I think challenging for you know, if it was required to be the right.
From a technical standpoint, the very first time that we did a true hybrid conference, I think was the most technically challenging. We went over to the National Corvette Museum and they do an event every spring and fall, but this was the spring event and they call it NCM Bash. And so they have speakers from General Motors and Michelin and like very high level organizations, some of which we had kind of had some exposure to, but not that many all at one time. So that was initially stressful being like, oh, it's, GM, it's Michelin, kind of pull my stuff together. But then also to figure out for the very first time how to set up in a live conference center, but also do two-way audio routing back and forth from people that are remoting in versus people that are there versus people that are asking questions in the chat remotely and kind of technically managing all of that. Prior to it just being a virtual thing, that was our first really true, very involved hybrid sort of event. That was probably the most technically challenging that I remember being like up in the middle of the night rethinking through all of my routing just to make sure that it was all going to work properly. Yes?
Do you have a favorite project you've worked on?
I've got one recent and then one that's like earlier this year. Just 2.5 weeks ago, we went up to the Harley-Davidson Museum in Milwaukee and got to do a live stream where the Motorsports Hall of Fame was posthumously inducting the founders of Harley-Davidson and their family members were there. And so we got to kind of live stream that sort of event and them, accepting on their great-grandfather's behalf that founded Harley-Davidson, and it was very emotional. And there was a lot of content prep from their archive footage beforehand. And that was really, like when we were done, it was very rewarding. And then a favorite project that's not been released yet, the Corvette assembly plant is now creating right-hand drive Corvettes. So they've never done that in factory before other than this edition. And so their GM Australia affiliate reached out to the plant here. And so we technically got to do a project for GM Australia, but here in Bowling Green, which was kind of cool. So that one's also kind of up the list for me.